Hello, everybody. Welcome to the very first episode of Ghostwood, the Twin Peaks podcast. Are you excited? I'm excited.
I'm excited.
You're excited. I'm Charles Skaggs. Maybe you know me from, things like Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast, or the Phantom Zone podcast. Well, here I am with the third podcast. And I have a new co-host, which I'm very excited to talk to because I've known Xan quite a while. We've known each other since conventions, so let me introduce Xan Sprouse.
Hi, I'm Xan Sprouse, and I am all things nerd.
Yes.
And I love to talk about all things nerd, so when Charles mentioned he wanted to do a Twin Peaks podcast, I just said, me too! Let's do it! So I'm very excited. I'm very excited to talk about it because I'm sure 2017 is going to be me just talking about Twin Peaks most of the time.
Yes, because with the Showtime series, obviously, we thought now would be a great time to do this. This is something I've kind of been wanting to do for quite a while, but I've been looking for the right co-host, and I think I found it with Xan. So
I think you and I will do good with this.
I would think so because over the years we throw quotes back and forth on Facebook. Numerous Twin Peaks references. So I know you're a hardcore Twin Peaks fan. I'm a Twin Peaks fan, obviously. So yes. These are two great tastes. I think are going to go great together. So I'm excited about this.
Butter, baby.
Exactly. So let's get into this a little bit. Xan, how did you get to be a Twin Peaks fan? I'm dying to know this.
Okay. Twin Peaks was on my freshman year of high school. Mm-hmm. And I went to a nerd high school. For anybody who is in the central Ohio, specifically Worthington area, I went to the Linworth Alternative Program, which is an offshoot of the Worthington school system. It is a public school, but it requires an application process and a selection process. And it's based around self-motivated learning, smaller classes, paper and exam-based grades rather than homework-based grades. So, as you can imagine, a place like that would attract a lot of nerds. We were sort of an informal kind of a place, just sort of no study hall. We just had a big room that we called the big room, and we'd hang out in it.
Right.
And everybody was talking about it. Everybody just I'd missed the first episode and hadn't seen much, and then I get into school and everybody's going crazy and talking about it and reading Laura's diary and all this stuff.
I don't mean to interrupt, but so did you catch it through word of mouth, or did you see the commercial and check out the show?
Saw it was on, and here's one of another nerdy thing about me. I couldn't watch it at first because it was during my piano lesson. So then I started taping it. I finally got, my parents got a second VCR so we could actually tape things like that. Because back in the 80s and 90s, parents only had one VCR, and sometimes it was in either the main room or their room, and you couldn't touch it. If you wanted to tape something and they wanted to watch something, forget it. That's not how it worked.
I'm glad I'm talking to somebody old enough to feel my pain on this.
Yes, exactly.
We're from the same generation, so...
Yes, we are. So it was this huge thing, and I'd be like, okay, I'll watch it, and then I'd watch an episode or two here and there, so I knew characters and things like that. Well, then it got canceled. And then I just happened to be in Kettering with some friends. It was, I don't remember what time of the year that was, but I was in Kettering visiting friends who all got together and watched Twin Peaks. So they all got together and watched it when it came back. And then I was completely obsessed from there on out. Completely obsessed. When it changed nights, that was even better because that wasn't my piano lesson night.
So you get to watch it live and
yes, and
better resolution than the
VHS
tape.
I still taped it. So I had those videotapes for years and years and years until the first DVDs came out. I still had my old Twin Peaks videotapes. And then when I was in college, it got rerun on Bravo. It would get rerun in the afternoon on Bravo.
And those had the Catherine Coulson Log Lady intros.
Yes, they do.
Which I loved.
So, yeah, those were fantastic because that was something new. And so I was able to go back and tape everything. So I was able to have the whole series finally. So it was high school. It was just, everybody was talking about it. And I said, okay, well, I have to make time for this. And when I did, it was just, forget it. I'm done. This is my new favorite thing. And became just completely obsessed with it.
That's awesome. That's a good story. I like that story.
What about you? How'd you get into it?
I'm a little different. Obviously, this happened in 1990, when the show premiered. I was in college at UCF in the University of Central Florida in Orlando. My family and I had just recently moved down there from Medina, Ohio, because we wanted to get away from the snow and all this because of lake effect snow, and wanted a fresh start because they had just decided to leave their family restaurant that they owned and operated for like 11 years.
Wow.
So we decided, okay, we're packing up the truck and moving to Beverly, Orlando. But so we went down there. They set up. I got my own apartment and started going to UCF after transferring from Kent State.
Okay.
And so the show, started airing. At the time, I was like, and actually, real still to this day, I was really into Vertigo comics, or like what would become Vertigo comics.
Right.
So you like the Grant Morrison Animal Man and Doom Patrol and Shade the Changing Man by Peter Milligan and all that. So I was already geared toward that kind of weird, this is obviously being in college, you get exposed to new things. This is one of the things I started getting into. And so I was kind of opening myself up to this, that kind of like offbeat, quirky, weird storytelling than what I had traditionally been used to. So when I saw the first commercial, I was just like, okay, I got to check this out. And from the get-go, I want to say that from the opening moments, and when I think when like Dale Cooper is sitting in the car entering Twin Peaks, and he's talking to Diane, and he does the Diane February whatever 24th entering the town of Twin Peaks, blah blah blah. That's when I fell in love with it. I was just completely, it captured my imagination so hard. And I think, and there's only another show, Doctor Who, that's really captured my imagination like that to the point of obsession. And Twin Peaks is one of those. And then,
that's interesting when you're talking about him. You reminded me of something when he's driving.
Right.
It's interesting to me that we're both from Ohio. You from Northern Ohio, me from Central Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
There are parts of Ohio that always looked like Twin Peaks to me. When it was, we do have evergreens here.
Yes.
And I just remember being on road trips with my parents thinking, this, I could totally do the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah. And we do have some creepy woods around in this state.
Do.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, we do.
So, yeah, it's one of those things that, yeah, I think being from Ohio, it's just one of those things that, you identified it with it enough. And like you said, even though it's set in the Pacific Northwest, you still kind of identified with it. And obviously, like I thought, just the whole varied cast of characters with all their quirky little character traits, I just thought that was great. I love the dark and the offbeat humor. I think that appealed to me. And then obviously David Lynch's visual storytelling, that just captured my imagination and never let go. So
exactly. And I just remember noticing little things. Like I said, I was in high school at the time, and I just remember thinking, I don't know anybody who dresses like this.
Right.
But I know people like this. There's always a James, there's always an Audrey, there's always the Laura who's dark underneath, but on the outside she's the perfect popular girl, and there's the weirdos, which is us. My school was very we were like the goth kids before goth had a name. We were like a combination of the goth kids, the trench coat kids, and those guys that just lived in the computer lab. And then
and you were the only people that knew who Bauhaus was.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
That was us. We had people that looked like Morrissey and tried to look like Robert Smith and that kind of thing. So,
right.
But yeah, I just remember thinking like, yeah, nobody dresses like this. I remember that was a really major thing in my mind at the time. Like, this is never going to be dated because no one looked like this. There's no.
It's timeless.
90s clothes or anything like that,
it's its own entity, its own look.
It's its own little world. Yeah, it's its own little world. Yeah.
So yeah, obviously, I grew up in Medina, which is a very small town, and so yeah, I kind of got into the whole small town with the like bright sunny exterior with that dark underneath. What's secrecy and what's going on, and the that flip side that you don't really see. So, and obviously, being such a comic book geek, I have that imagination going anyway. So I like it. It was one of those like, well, okay, what if this was really going on, or what have you. So yeah, it was just one of those things that I identified with. Okay, so is there? Let's see. I think that's about it for that. So why don't we move on and actually talk about the book that we're going to talk about today, The Secret History of Twin Peaks, written by co-creator Mark Frost.
Yes.
The first real decent Twin Peaks material we've had
since the diary.
Since the diary.
Yeah.
I would say so, yeah, because I still have, like, I would say, well, that or the Diane tapes. That Kyle MacLachlan read, the audio tapes, the audio book.
That was really good too. But I feel like.
But obviously, the Laura Palmer Diary, written by Jennifer Lynch, was just amazing.
That was amazing, and I felt like it was a little bit more. I mean, as much as I love Cooper,
right?
This was a little bit more of an insight into Laura and the town rather than Cooper's history. We learned so much about Cooper's mother and things like that. But those were both very, very good. But I think if I had to pick one, I'd pick the diary over the transcripts of the tapes.
Yeah, it was one of those things that you, as a Twin Peaks fan, you really wanted to see.
Oh yeah.
And then you were all excited. You're like, oh, I finally get to read this. And there's like the little notations that, oh, this page has been ripped out or whatever.
Mm-hmm. This page
and you're like, oh, why?
You're like, oh, Bob, where is it? And
Bob shakes fist.
And that was the thing. I mean, back then, I mean, again, this is 1990,
right,
which is almost 27 years ago. And you didn't have, a Twin Peaks wiki or anything like that. And there may have been some Usenet groups that were going back and forth on the internet, but I didn't have a computer, let alone the internet.
Right.
So I had no idea. So we were just
in the old days before there was an internet.
Before the internet, kids gather around and listen to Grandma tell a tale.
We used to sit around and stare at rocks.
And we liked it.
Exactly.
And so we were just desperate. So I don't know about you, but I have those unofficial tour guides and things like that. And
that's the way I got too. Yeah, like I've got that. I've got the Dale Cooper, My Life, My Tapes, autobiography.
Yep.
I got that.
And
one.
I have the tape too. I have the tape of that as well. So just anything you could get your hands on. And were you able to get the Twin Peaks Gazette?
No, I did not get the Twin Peaks.
I didn't
Gazette.
either. I could never have afforded.
I wanted it, but
yeah, I wanted it too. And I called it one time, and the machine was Shelley. It was Shelley saying, "Hi, this is Shelley. If you want to order," I'm like, "Oh my god, this is it was just fun to call the number just to hear Shelley.
That's great."
So, and then we eventually had Wrapped in Plastic, but there was a long time where there wasn't a lot, so it didn't matter if it said Twin Peaks on it. I was reading it.
Yeah, well, and like you said, there wasn't that much. So yeah, I mean, Wrapped in Plastic was another magazine that I also got because it's like the only Twin Peaks fanzine that really was out there. I found out about it because my comic book store actually carried it.
Oh yeah.
At the time, so I got the first. Like, it wasn't the first issue, but it was like issue 4 or 5 or something. So
nice.
then I tracked down the other older issues and whatnot. I still have them, but
fantastic. Yeah, see, I don't have mine anymore, unfortunately, but yeah, I remember wishing I could get the Twin Peaks Gazette and thinking about asking for it for Christmas, but knowing my parents would be like, "Why the hell are you doing this?"
That's great.
Just never got around to that one, but yeah, I remember and I will. My husband had never watched Twin Peaks. He saw the first episode and the last episode.
Yes, we've talked about this. That we
So
need to work on your husband,
we're trying. We're going through it now that the Blu-ray is out.
right?
We're going through it, and I will talk about things, and he'll be like, "No, where does that come from?" I'm like, "Oh, the diary." He's like, What do I need to do to watch this show?" I'm like, "Nothing. This is just me being completely obsessive.
Just tell him it's bonus material.
It's just bonus material.
Yeah, you don't need to read that to watch the show.
Exactly.
You read it because you want to, not because you have to.
And it's an interesting thing too, the show, because and I always said that I thought this is why the movie Fire Walk with Me didn't do so well.
Right.
Is because Twin Peaks had a tremendous amount of word of mouth, and it was so strange that you would tune in and you would say to yourself, "Okay, I'm out. I don't understand what's going on. There's a lot of things I'm missing. There's a lot of background I'm not hearing." So I think a lot of people said, "Oh, there's a movie. I'll just go see the movie."
Mm-hmm.
And like most prequels, but I think to an even higher degree, Fire Walk with Me, as a prequel, you don't care unless you've seen the series.
Right. Well, it's a very dark film.
Oh, extremely dark.
Understandably, but it's a very dark film, and it's not like new viewer friendly at all.
No, not at all. And if you can, I'm trying to think of other. I mean, of course, the main one I'm thinking right now in my head would be Rogue One.
Right.
I feel like you could go see Rogue One as your first introduction to Star Wars,
and not be overwhelmed.
Not be overwhelmed by who, because you're not seeing a lot of the same people that we see later because we're just not in that realm yet. But with Twin Peaks, it's like you don't really care.
No. And with Fire Walk with Me, I think it's frustrating because you had like Harry Dean Stanton's characters and Chris Isaac's characters. They disappear like in the first half of the movie.
Right.
And we don't follow up with them. We're like Chet Desmond, Special Agent Chet Desmond disappears, and we have no idea what happened to him. There's no resolution to this.
And that
had to be frustrating to people just wanting to check it.
All kinds of other things like that, or Philip Jeffries.
Right. The David Bowie stuff, yeah.
So and I think that's a good way to segue into talking about the book, where that's one of my favorite things about this book is that it sort of gives us more information on some of these people. Like, for example, you mentioned the Harry Dean Stanton character.
Yeah, Carl Rod.
I did not realize that he also got lost in the woods.
That's something. That's something I thought was surprising, that they had a connection. That Carl Rod actually has a connection to the Log Lady.
Exactly, and you sort of realize that kind of everybody in Twin Peaks is connected to everybody else in some way, and I think that was another thing I really liked about the book, is that it had people that were sort of throwaway characters and comic relief in the show.
Like Dougie Milford, perhaps?
Like Mayor Milford, absolutely.
Well, Mayor Milford's brother.
Well,
Dougie's Milford's brother.
Right, and Dougie. Well, I even think Dwayne, the mayor, was sort of relief for this whole. Is this thing on? Mm-hmm. Where he can never talk into a microphone properly or anything like that. And then, of course, towards the end of the series, where they both have the same woman that killed one of them and is probably going to kill the other one too.
Probably.
If she can get her hands on the money.
Well, and actually, Lana is actually referenced in the book about like we kind of get a little bit of her story.
Yes, exactly. And so,
which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. But even with I'm thinking specifically of Dwayne being Andrew Packard's scoutmaster and everything they'd gone through and everything he'd seen and what he and his brother had seen, and how the tall man is sort of part of why they kind of don't talk to each other anymore. And so I think this book did a really good job of taking characters that we knew but didn't know anything about and making you understand why this idiot who can't use a microphone has been the mayor of this town for so long.
Exactly.
Because,
Exactly. Or or someone like, say, Major Briggs. It definitely adds to their character, and I think it gives them more depth than what we saw on the television show because of time limitations or what have you.
Exactly. And I think Major Briggs, in the television show, I think he started out as a way to explain why Bobby is the way that he is, why
Right.
he's so rebellious because he has
He
this,
was that stolid authority figure that Bobby was
right.
rebelling against.
Exactly. Exactly. And so, um, and then later on, he has the government contacts. So where they're doing their uh, satellite radio monitoring, and they see Cooper come out in the gobbledygook. I mean, the major is there to have that sort of connection.
Yeah, he also serves that expository role
Yes.
to to basically hint at that mystery in the woods and the alien connection,
Hmm.
and that's one of the things in this book which really plays up that UFO alien mystery, especially with the that organization. Like we learn about the actual organization that Major Briggs works for, and
Hmm.
it has a installation out in the woods monitoring what's going on.
Right.
That LPA, and so I thought that was really interesting as well. All right, so um, obviously we're talking about the book, so let's get into the nitty gritty. I think I want to talk about the framework of this book, and it's presented in the form of a dossier that is recovered from what they say is, quote, a crime scene that is still classified as unsolved and may have relevance to a previous crime or crimes in 1991 that is similarly classified, which is gobbledygook for saying, like, hey, it references the show.
Right. This reference is not only possibly the murder of. This reference is most likely the murder of Laura Palmer and possibly the murder of Teresa Banks.
Right. So this ends up in the hands of Gordon Cole. Gordon Cole!
You got to speak louder, Sonny. You've seen the trailer.
And I have, yes, the Gordon Cole trailer where he's sitting there eating a donut, and I'm just geeking out
With
over.
his hearing aids. He still has the big ass hearing aids. He hasn't upgraded yet to anything in ear. I love it.
Yeah,
He's still
you think you would get that implant, or at least
or something, or just something
the cochlear implant.
ear,
Yeah.
But nope, he's still got the big ones.
Well, he's old school.
Love it.
He's
Oh, he's not going to spend money he doesn't need to spend.
right, exactly. But hopefully, he still has those things cranked up to the max.
Hopefully. Well, and maybe Shelley's around.
I would love it if they hooked up.
That would be fantastic.
How great
Yeah.
would that be? Because get Shelley away from Leo, and
Get
hook
away
her up.
from Bobby.
Get her away from Bobby, and hook her up with Gordon Cole. But
I think that'd be fantastic.
that would be. So I guess we'll find out because obviously both Machen Amick and David Lynch are appearing.
Yep.
So yep, looking forward to that. So Gordon Cole gives the dossier to a new character that's presented in the book, a special agent that's first referred to as TP,
Which I love.
which is obviously like, oh, Twin Peaks, oh, how clever. But apparently her name turns out to be Tamara Preston.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, obviously, if this is a new character that's going to be featured in the new Showtime series, or if this is just something for the book only. I'm hoping it's in the Showtime series.
I wondered that too because there's a lot of questions at the FBI right now, I think.
Right. And I was thinking though from a writing standpoint, because obviously I write. So from a writing standpoint, I would think you would want a character because Cooper's going to be off being still possessed by Bob, presumably.
Hmm.
So you kind of need that character that's kind of up to speed on the backstory, on the mystery that's sent there to go like, here he is 25 years later, and this new agent, Tamara Preston, maybe, is sent there to kind of follow up on what happened based on the events of that dossier, if it's actually incorporated in the show, which I presume it is.
I I will say this is one of those shows that I don't care what they do. I'm going to watch it. I'm going to love
Right,
it.
right.
Because there are those things that even if they're not very good, you love the characters, so you don't care because
Right.
you just want to see what happens to the characters. Um,
Yeah,
and
we don't
yeah,
even know if it's going to factor in at all. It could be just
no, we have no idea. And
completely
that's one of my
isolated.
favorite things about David Lynch is that we have absolutely no idea how this is going to pan out. But at the same time, too, you'll need somebody with all of it, including the past information and all of the other
The
areas,
backstory.
the backstory, all of the other areas,
Yeah.
the Dougie Milford classified stuff, because you do have people like Harry Truman and like Hawk who know a lot about what's going on in the town, but they are just local law enforcement.
Right. They might not be talking either.
Right. That's true. That's true. And that's another thing. Where are we now with those guys? It's been 25 years. Are they retired? Are they still there?
Yeah. So that's why I kind of thought this character Preston would be great, a good gateway to kind of like she goes around the town, and that's how we kind of get reintroduced to the classic characters as well as the new
Yeah.
characters. And
Yeah. But, of course, she'll stop in the Double R and she
right.
needs just the Great Northern and all that fun stuff. So
So yeah, well, and we'll catch up on what everybody like that's sadly still living, unfortunately, because we've lost cast members.
we've lost three major cast members, and two of them were major players in the David Lynch
Right,
ensemble. It's how it was. What was it? It's been almost 20 years, I think, since we lost Jack Nance,
right.
and Catherine Coulson just passed away last year.
But
And
from what I understand, she actually recorded some scenes.
that's what I heard too. But I'm just waiting to. That'll be like
We don't know how it's going to come out though. So yeah,
and I think that's the one thing that I am very curious about, that I'm most curious about with this show is how they're going to do Bob, because Frank Silva is gone as well, and
I have a
he
theory, but go ahead.
he is one of those faces, Bob specifically, that I still get scared when I
Right.
see him. I still get, my heart starts going. And if I know he's gonna be on screen, I'm probably gonna like turn my head a little bit so I don't have to look at him. It's like Bob and the twins from The Shining. I can't look at any of those people. So yeah, you have a theory? What's your theory?
Well, my theory is that with obviously Frank Silva, who played Bob, he's obviously no longer with us. I would think that Bob would be represented by Ray Wise,
Okay,
as because we saw Leland in the Black Lodge, and I don't know if you remember that first little teaser we got where it's all blurry and you can't make out who's shown.
okay,
You remember that one? It was
I do.
there they start like it was that I think it was that video where like Michael Horse, who plays Hawk, was kind of talking about the town, and then they kind of cut to this really disturbed image, like it's all
Yes,
white and blurry, and you're not
yeah,
sure what's going on. Well, that figure that we just barely glimpse seems to have white hair. So I
okay.
kind of wonder if it's Leland and if he's going to be basically assuming the Bob's form, or like the spirit of Bob. He's going to be representing that. I don't know.
That would be a good way to bring back Leland.
Right. And it gives Ray
Because
Wise a lot to do. Or
gives her what
or you could just recast the role. But
I don't think that's I think it'll work for a new batch of viewers, but I
mhm,
think for people like us, it's going to be distracting.
I
So,
agree. I agree.
and if they do, I'd rather it be something like a just off in the distance, gray hair and jean jacket kind of a thing, not
Mhm.
like close ups or the whole climb over the sofa into your face kind of thing that
That
he does.
that's one of the most unsettling images I have ever watched.
That's horrifying. I can to this day that
When
like
he just slowly Bob slowly walked into the room into
mhm,
the Haywood living room, and
yep,
then turns to the camera and starts coming at you. He starts just directly coming at you and climbing over stuff,
climbing over the
and you're
furniture.
like, oh, I can't watch this.
It's terrible. I mean, to talk about it, my palms are sweaty talking about it.
Are you nervous? I don't mean to make you upset. So.
It's really, really terrifying. That scene is terrifying, and I think that it's amazing someone who can be so good physically like that.
I totally agree.
He's not necessarily anybody we've seen before or a bad guy, or he just does a great job. He did a fabulous job. And so I think I like that theory because I have been wondering how they're going to bring back.
And we know Ray Wise can be creepy as hell.
Ray Wise does a fantastic job, especially in Fire Walk with Me, where he just turns on a dime. Like 1 second he's Bob, and then the next second, just with a facial expression.
That whole scene where he finally kills Laura.
If you want to make me cry,
yeah,
play the audio from that. That will immediately make me cry.
Yeah,
that is one of the most powerful things I've ever seen. I think Ray Wise is an extremely underrated performer.
I agree.
And I think that he's one of those people that, nerds like us just absolutely adore him because of Twin Peaks and RoboCop.
I was going to say, yeah, that's where it was like, when I go back to RoboCop, I was like, it's Leland, or like now I see Ray Wise and on things like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or whatever, and I'm like, it's Leland.
Exactly. Or when he was on The Closer. I loved him in The Closer. I think he's very good. I think he's very
or the recent Gilmore Girls. On Netflix. Yeah, he's in that. He plays an older gentleman who ends up dating Emily Gilmore. I don't know if you ever watched Gilmore Girls, but yeah.
I did not, but it is a reboot that I am aware of. So, but yeah.
Yes, I watched Gilmore Girls. I'll own up to it.
There's nothing wrong with that.
My wife and I got into it, and then it's just I really got into it because of the writing, but that's all right. That's neither here nor there.
I've heard it's wonderful, and I was another actor who's no longer with us, sadly. I was always a really big fan of Edward Herrmann.
Yes.
And
The Lost Boys.
For me, with Edward Herrmann, it was Annie.
Right.
As President FDR, and then solidified with The Man with One Red Shoe. Mm-hmm. So.
Very nice. Yeah.
So yeah, that'll be interesting. I do hope they do a lot with Ray Wise, because that is such a complex character, so much history with him that I would love to learn. We know that he was in the woods with his family when he first saw Bob, but we don't really know, much of what manifested, what things he did when he was younger, that kind of stuff, like how many years he's lost.
We have kind of glimpses. And
right.
We have talk about Bob used to flick matches at me as a kid and whatnot. Yeah. But, we might also get Kyle MacLachlan being Bob in this. And
that would be
heartbreaking.
Heartbreaking. That was, I'll tell you a story about watching the last episode. The last episode of Twin Peaks aired Monday, June 10th, 1991. And
I am impressed that you know the date. I am impressed.
I taped them. So I taped them when they aired, and then when I rewatched them, I had the tape of Lucy saying, the final episode will be Monday, June 10th. So I will always remember that Monday, June 10th, 1991 was the last day of Twin Peaks being aired, which means summertime, which means the windows were open.
Right.
So I'm watching the season finale of Twin Peaks, and then
At night,
Cooper's in the bathroom, and he slams his head into the mirror, and then we pull back, and I start screaming.
I'll bet.
Screaming, just no, just horrible screaming. My mother comes running in, and she knows I'm just watching TV, and she knows what it is, and she just says, "The windows are open. You need to shut up."
You're going to wake the neighbors.
Yeah, the neighbors are not going to know that you're watching Twin Peaks.
That's funny. But, I feel bad for you, but that is kind of funny. So, yeah. And it was so frustrating because you're like, oh, he goes through all this, and then this is how they end the show? No, you can't do this to me.
It was one of those things where the show ends on that, and you're like, I need to know what happens. And then you're like, but if he's going to be Bob, I don't want to know what happens.
Well, and then when Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me comes out, you're like, oh, maybe they'll, fix this.
No, and he's not even in
And they
it for
don't.
more than like 10
No,
minutes.
no. And like, and the whole thing with Annie, like, there's a little
Yeah.
like kind of nod, like that there's some timey-wiminess going on, to use a Doctor Who
Yes,
reference.
with her in Laura's bed.
Like saying, that tailed like
Write it in your
tailed it
diary. This
writing
again,
writing your
lab just
diary,
can't get out.
right?
Yep.
So yeah, so you're like, okay, well, is that going to be played up on in the new series? There's so many questions that still linger, and I think that's one of the reasons why I think people are getting excited about this, because like hopefully we finally get some answers, but then we might get new questions that don't get resolved, and we start all over again.
And that's part of what I want. Is I want new questions. I want new mysteries to obsess over.
Well, we have new characters, so you figure you've got new characters, new situations, and so they could maybe wrap up some of the classic storylines, but then introduce all new ones, and who knows how long this, like, will they do more? Will they not do more, or what have you? So, all right, have you noticed we tend to digress on
We
podcasts?
do. Yeah, it is. It's
And
easy to do.
Karen and I really digress a lot, so it's what we do. Um, so don't feel bad. This is kind of how, like, we start on one topic and then just totally meander and end up talking about something else because we're like, ooh, we're all excited and we got to talk about it.
It's so exciting to talk about Twin Peaks.
And yes, I totally feel the same, and I'm so glad I'm doing this podcast with you.
Me too.
So, all right, so let's actually talk about the book a little bit,
All right.
as I try to awkwardly segue back to that. So we get the introduction of someone, the compiler of the dossier, called the archivist,
Hmm.
and it's left as a nice little mystery that lingers all the way pretty much to the end of the book.
Very close to the end of the book. Exactly.
And it's one of those, like, if you're not really paying attention, you might actually miss the revelation of who the archivist is.
True. If you are just skimming it, it can just sort of go
But
over it.
that was kind of one of the things I wanted to talk about. So the since I kind of brought that up, we might as well go ahead and just jump right into that. So one of the things I wanted to talk about this before, I am going to get to the other stuff, but I did want to talk about how the archivist is ultimately revealed to be Major Briggs. Spoilers who don't read the book. Well, guess what? You're listening to a Twin Peaks podcast. We're going to spoil everything, so it's fair game.
You're listening to a Twin Peaks podcast. This book has been out for months. You've read it. If you care enough to listen to our podcast,
exactly. And if you missed it, if you bought the book and you missed it, well, shame on you. Yeah, shame on you for not paying closer attention. You
go back and read like the last maybe 10th of the book, and you'll find it.
Exactly. But so I thought that revelation was really interesting because it kind of gives Major Briggs, this whole new, like, you kind of wonder how long has he been compiling this dossier? Has he just been watching everybody?
And what started it?
Right. What initiated the reason to compile a dossier?
What possessed him to start compiling it? And what was he working on that he started connecting things like the Lewis and Clark stuff,
right,
with what's going on in Twin Peaks, and with the same, the main character that we see throughout all of the stories is definitely are the owls and the tall man,
right?
And so, what was he working on that he was able to put those things together?
Yeah, and that's, you brought up the Lewis and Clark expedition. Yeah, this thing goes all the way back to 1805, mm-hmm. and it kind of just presents this, like, history of the area, but then also, yeah, just like, reveals these little nuggets along the way. And so what I kind of wanted to ask you is, like, okay, what from those historical areas, what really intrigued you? Was it the Lewis and Clark thing, or was it like stuff like, where you find out that Dougie was talking with, like, involved with President Nixon, or other things like that? What actually grabbed you historically?
Historically, definitely the Lewis and Clark stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The things that were more tied to the area
Right.
of Twin Peaks, because as Sheriff Truman has said before, there is evil in these woods. And so that intrigued me the most. So the Lewis and Clark stuff with what they were seeing, where they were, and then there was that scene with, and I apologize, I don't remember who these guys were. I think they were panning for gold, or they were miners, or they were fur trappers or something.
Right.
And they pretty much saw Bob. And they have that in their journal talking about that. And those were the most interesting things to me. But a lot of the Dougie stuff was fascinating, because was Dougie drawn to that kind of work because of where he was from? Or was that work drawn to him because of where he was from?
Right.
And just and with the Dougie stuff, how wide reaching all this stuff is, and that there may be more towns like Twin Peaks that are having these experiences.
Yeah, you don't know how far reaching this whole thing is.
Exactly. There's I mean, obviously if
it can happen in one town, it can happen anywhere.
Right, exactly. And you have the obvious Area 51, and so and I always like stories that sort of tie the Area 51 mythology into their own mythology, because it sort of adds that little bit of like, oh, this could be real.
Right.
Sort of thing.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, just we all know better. It's one of those, or just the way this book did that with certain nods to historical things, like everything that had to do with Nixon was a tape transcript.
Right, of course.
We all know that Nixon taped everything, and
yeah,
like,
exactly, because he was so paranoid and everything. So
exactly.
Yeah, Nixon's paranoia, I think, fits in with the whole Dougie storyline very well.
Fits in perfectly, and
because Nixon was secretive, and then Dougie has to be secretive because he works for the LPA and whatnot. And so
yeah, exactly. But I found the Lewis and Clark stuff the most interesting to me, because just of how long ago it's been there, and obviously if it's there for them, it's probably there before them too.
Right.
So.
Yeah. We do get some revelations about what happened after the series finale. So I kind of wanted to get into that a little bit. We had we find out some things, like some very simple things that seem a little obvious in retrospect, but for one instance, we get the revelation of what happened after the bank explosion in the final episode.
Okay.
Where we had Audrey, we thought was killed in the explosion, but she turns out, guess what? She survived the explosion.
And that made me extremely happy.
Yeah.
When I found that out. Audrey was one of my all-time favorite characters.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed with that's how they killed her off, and I thought it was a little let down. So yeah,
that was a little bit of a letdown. So
and I was crushing on Sherilyn Fenn very hard.
Oh, who wasn't
back in the day? So yeah.
Who wasn't?
Yeah, no matter who you are, what gender, whatever, you were crushing on Sherilyn Fenn.
You either wanted to be with her or you wanted to be her. It doesn't matter.
She could be your girl crush. She could be exactly.
She was sort of my girl ambition. Like,
you're like, this is my what I'd love to be.
This is what perfect is.
Yeah.
And then over here is me, and maybe once in a while we'll meet in the middle, but that's too much makeup. But so we did find out that Audrey survived the
savings and loan explosion. Yeah,
the savings and loan explosion. But there was something in the book that I thought was bizarre.
Right.
Was we read the letter that she wrote to her father, supposedly on the day that she went to the bank. But it sort of supposes that he's still a bad guy. And they'd already mended their relationship, and he was already carrot-eating Benjamin Horne rather than cigar-smoking Benjamin Horne.
And that's one of the contradictions that a lot of fans have brought up. Like, Well, wasn't he? Yeah, didn't they like you said, mend their ways or mend their fences and
You already
wasn't Ben trying to be someone good? And then here we find out that Ben, after he gets that note, ends up like closing, like he goes ahead and with his plan anyway that he was supposedly going to scrap because
right. Ghostwood
but
Development
but
Project.
yeah, he goes ahead to close the Packard Mill, turn Ghostwood Forest into like what they refer to, like Audrey refers to, I think, as tacky neighborhoods and shopping centers.
Yes, yes,
And
exactly.
and then so yeah, he goes and visits Audrey in the hospital. I think she's obviously been in a coma for a long time. She might still be in a coma for all we know.
That's possible. Yeah, that's true.
And then maybe that's how they kind of keep her on ice until bringing her
Hmm.
back. But but it talks about how like supposedly he was like um, broken in half with grief, and he had all this guilt, understandably.
Understandably, yes.
But yeah, he just goes ahead with that purchase, and because Catherine, as we find out, ends up like. I guess we should go back in a little bit and say that Pete Martell was sadly killed off during that bank explosion. We find out that
Yes.
he died saving Audrey's life,
Which I think
which I liked a lot.
I did like that too. Pete was a very good guy. He was a very good character.
He was one of my favorite characters on the show, just because like he was into chess, and he was just always doing something quirky and offbeat, and I just loved him.
He was
Uh,
very down to earth for, being part of that rich family. He never
right,
got that rich family.
and he was that kind of
It-
cuckolded husband that just you had
yeah.
Catherine just abusing the crap out of him.
And he's
And
just like, hey, I can just fish here and hang out with Josie. This will be, I'm fine.
yeah, exactly. He was the most like easygoing character on the show.
Absolutely.
Probably one of the more saner characters on the show.
Yeah, he certainly was. He had his quirks,
Right.
but he was very level-headed. He was always around. He was very trusted by everyone. And I think that having him die saving Audrey is also a good way to explain why there is not going to be a Pete Martell.
Exactly. Obviously, as we mentioned, Jack Nance is no longer with us, so it makes sense to kill off his character, especially the way his character was left.
Yes.
So that makes perfect sense. So now the reason I bring this up is because obviously with Catherine, after Pete's death, she ends up becoming the hermit, quite a hermit.
Right. She does go ahead and sell.
She's just like, okay, that's it. I'm done. I'm out.
Mhm.
I'm selling, Ghostwood, or the land,
Selling
and
some of the Ghostwood. I'm just,
the mill's gone. I'm done with that, and I'm just gonna hide out here in what is it here? That the Blue Pine Lodge. Yeah. So
yes, Blue Pine Lodge. Yeah,
yeah.
she just sort of retreats into herself, which will be interesting because, as we all know, Piper Laurie can play crazy.
Yes. Now she's not listed on one of the cast list. That
See, I
was
haven't been looking. I don't want to know until I see them.
yeah.
You
Well,
know?
here's the thing though. Even though there's a cast list, it could be a lie. We don't like maybe
That's true.
people like aren't announced will actually turn up,
That's very true. Yeah,
which
it
would be
could.
nice as like big surprise, like oh my god, yeah they actually got so and so.
Yes, that would be wonderful. That's what I'm trying for is trying to avoid that as much. So when I do watch the show, I can be all like, oh
Yeah,
my god.
yeah,
So
and then you geek out
have
because
those
like
moments. Yes, those geek out moments.
yeah.
Yeah.
So Andrew, of course, her brother checked out, but
Yes,
yeah,
he did.
Dan O'Hallery, he sadly died. So yeah,
Yes, Dan Hurley is sadly no longer with us.
yeah. So obviously, but it made sense because he was the one like right in front of the bomb anyway. So
Hmm.
yeah,
He
so it made
was.
sense to him check out. Okay, so we went through Ben. I'm just going through my notes here because I'm so professional. And we we got a little update on Hank Jennings, Norma's husband,
Yes,
Chris,
yes.
which I thought
Hank.
was fun. Go ahead.
I did think that was fun because I hated Hank, so I'm glad he's back in jail.
Yeah. Well, even better, he's dead.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
killed off his
Exactly.
character.
They killed him off. Yeah, they killed him off in jail, didn't they?
Yeah,
Wasn't he
yeah,
killed? Yeah.
yeah. So I've gotten here in my notes that, okay, so after pleading guilty to international drug trafficking, assault, and attempted murder, oh, is that all?
Is that that's all that they know?
That's all they know. Exactly. That's all they got him with. He ends up getting like this 25-year sentence at the Washington State Penitentiary in Walla Walla, Washington. And then, quote, gets fatally knifed in the prison weight room by a hardcore lifter who turned out to be a distant cousin of, surprise, the Renaults.
The Renault brothers. Yes.
Yeah.
Jacques, Jean, and Bernard. Bernard.
How many of these Renaults are there? They're everywhere. There's a never-ending supply of Renaults.
You have as many as you need.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Walter Olkowitz is on that list I mentioned. So is it going to be a flashback with him? No, I'm kind of wondering. Or is he going to just turn out to be like a cousin that looks a lot?
Yeah, that would be interesting. He was I hated him so much. I hated all.
That one close-up where he's talking about bite the bullet, baby, bite the bullet.
Oh,
you get all skeeved out by that.
Oh, he's so skeevy. He does such a good job of being just disgusting.
I'm sure he's a perfectly wonderful person.
He's probably a perfectly wonderful person. He's just a really good actor that creeps me out now.
Exactly. All right, so let's get into something I know you've been dying to talk about, these contradictions. So a segment I call Errors, Contradictions, or Something Else.
Something else. Well, we already talked about one with the letter that Audrey wrote to her father before the bank explosion.
Right.
It feels to me like that letter would have been written before Ben decided to go good. I always call it as, there's cigar smoking Ben Horn and there's carrot eating Ben Horn.
Right.
And by the time he was carrot eating Ben Horn and Jerry wasn't around with his bad influence, and he brings in John Justice Wheeler, who is another character I hope we see again, but I don't know.
Billy Zane, yeah.
Billy Zane. That sort of surprised me that they did that. And there were some other things like that were origins that sort of contradicted the origins we heard on the show. Like, for example, there's a whole section in the book where Hawk talks about I forget what he calls it, like the Ballad of Big Ed and Norma.
Yes, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and he talks about how
Big Ed and Norma hooked up, and with Nadine, that whole like triangle.
Exactly, and it's completely different than the story Hank tells in, I believe, the pilot episode.
Right.
Where he talks about how she and...
You mean Big Ed tells?
Yes, Big Ed tells it. Yes, I'm sorry.
That's right.
Big Ed tells the story about, Hank and Norma go off, and so he's freaking out, and so then there's Nadine, so they go off together, and they go hunting, and he shoots her eye out, and...
You'll shoot your eye out, you'll shoot...
But the Hawk story is very different, where he and Norma had broken up, and Hank was taking the letters, and Nadine shows up at the gas farm, and it was just very, very different. And I'm curious as to why contradiction is there.
Yeah, and Mark Frost, the writer of this book, obviously, he's made some very vague comments that just because it was presented in the dossier doesn't mean that it's actual fact. That perhaps someone, for whatever reason that we don't know, has changed events or isn't describing things accurately for whatever purpose. So you can't trust everything you read.
You can't trust everything. That's true. I did hear that he had said that, made that vague comment about it, but I so want to trust Hawk. That's the thing. I mean, Hawk is such a stoic, seemingly trustworthy personality, and I felt that the, for lack of a better term, voice that was used for Hawk in this book was very different than the Hawk that I thought I knew from the show.
So maybe that's somebody trying to rewrite history, but I don't know why. What would be the purpose of rewriting, that story? What purpose? What purpose would it serve?
Makes Hank look bad, and it makes Big Ed look better. because Big Ed doesn't shoot anybody's eye on this version of the story. So there's that, and those were the two really big ones that I just was really surprised by. That was something that I just thought I quote unquote knew for fact, quote unquote fact. This being, I am obsessed with the show, but I do know it's not real.
Right. It's not. You just totally blown my whole raison d'etre.
Sorry about that. But yeah, it's and then there are just little things that once I found out who the archivist was, could just have been little basic misinformation.
Right.
Like photos are captioned incorrectly. Like there's a photo of Big Ed and Norma at the Roadhouse, but the caption says it's them at the R&R.
Right.
Which it's not. It's from the night at the Roadhouse where Jacques Renault slips him a Mickey and Mike and Bobby start that fight. There's a photo of Hank that says it's his last day at the Double R, but it's actually the day he gets out of jail at the Double R, things like that. Just little things like that just could very well be.
You don't know what's deliberate misinformation or if it's just lazy writing.
Or if it's just Major Briggs doesn't know. He just knows that this is a picture of Hank, right, or this is a picture of Big Ed and Norma, and that's an assumption. And then there's one thing that I thought was an interesting, historically speaking, before there were movies and television, newspapers tended to be sensationalist for the sake of. I know, right?
Sensationalist newspapers? Get out of town.
And even when you had a town that had maybe two newspapers, right, the Enquirer and the Chronicle, shall we say, they would have two different versions of a news story, just so you would buy both of them.
Right.
And you never knew quite what was real. And the Twin Peaks Gazette was never particularly a bastion of hard-hitting journalism or anything like that. But the description in the Gazette talked about Catherine and Pete getting together. How he was sort of this run-of-the-mill guy, and she's this debutante, and they fell in love over winter break, sort of a thing. And one of the things they said about Pete was Pete played checkers, not chess, like to tell you that he's a simple man.
Right.
Pete was a chess champion.
Yes, he was. I mean, and that's one of the things why I have to think that, okay, yeah, it's deliberate misinformation, because he's obviously, his chess fascination is one of the things that is like this big major component of the Wyndham Earle storyline. Exactly. Because he helps Harry and Cooper. Basically, he's trying to create a stalemate games to keep people alive that Wyndham Earle is threatening to kill every time he takes a piece off the board. Right. He's gonna kill somebody, so he has to get to a stalemate, and even Pete says, I can't do it without two more pieces. So yeah. I just think that was funny, because it's like, okay, this is obviously just a puff piece for this newspaper. They're not actually interviewing anyone. They're not actually they're not actually talking to anyone. I just thought that one was funny. But I think the biggest one for me was, and the reason it sticks out for me so much is because it is in police documentation and in medical documentation, according to the dossier. But the log lady's leg marking, right, from when she disappears into the woods, for 3 days with two other people, and all three of them come back disoriented with no memory of what they did. But she has a mark on the back of her leg, which, according to this book, is different than what they showed us in the show. Yes. It's the 3 triangles rather than the 2 peaks, which really surprised me that they did that, because it's something we've obviously seen. So what is going on with that? Like, is that a mix-up in the police files or in the medical records, that it was really on Harry Dean Stanton, or
I forget the other guy who was lost.
Yeah, it was some little other guy that really didn't have much
We don't
impact.
really hear from him. We haven't heard from him again. Was it one of theirs? Is this a cover up trying to cover up what she has and why she has that one? So that one to me was very, because of all the symbolism that is in the show with with Owl Cave and all the maps and things like that. I just thought that one was very.
Yeah.
That's what I wonder where they're going with.
Now, some of the speculation that fans have been doing online about that particular instance, I've got a couple examples. They said that one fan was speculating that, well, someone altered Doc Hayward's medical report.
Mm-hmm.
Why, we don't know. Or
and who? I would assume
exactly.
Dougie.
Yeah.
Would it be?
Yeah. Maybe it was Dougie because maybe he was part of the cover-up.
Exactly.
Or that the tattoo somehow changed because it's perhaps alien in nature.
And that's possible too. Or like I said, it could be that if we saw the Harry Dean Stanton medical records, they'd have her peaks on there rather than the three triangles,
right.
Where they just got them mixed up, or, was one person marked one way and another person marked another way, and they're all supposed to have different purposes, that kind of thing.
I know I keep spoiling who's on the cast list, but Harry Dean Stanton is on the cast list.
That I did know.
Okay, so good. I didn't spoil that one for you. So that makes me kind of excited because now I'm kind of wondering if they're going to play up this connection that he had with the log lady.
I would love that.
Because we didn't see him with triangles on anything, but it makes his appearance in Fire Walk with Me more significant because maybe he's connected to that particular mystery.
Exactly, and could what happened to him? What was his life like? Where does he go?
Right,
because he just up and disappears.
Right, yeah, he just leaves the trailer park altogether.
Yeah, he's just gone, and we see Let's Rock written on the car in lipstick, and he's gone.
Yep.
Chow fonts are gone. We don't know where anybody is. So.
I just want to know, like, if he has if he's still making his cup of Good Morning America.
Good Morning America, yes, but not before 9 a.m.
Right. I love talking to someone who has like even greater Twin Peaks knowledge than an obscure reference material than I have. That's awesome. I don't feel like normally I'm like, oh, I'm geeking about this stuff, and everybody's like looking at me going, what are you talking about? But you understand me.
I do.
You feel my pain.
I do.
Yes.
I do. Well, and his character is one of the most quoted things I say from anything in Twin Peaks.
Right.
That's just more shit I got to do today.
That's a great line. You can't go wrong with that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can't go wrong with Harry Dean Stanton. Come on.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, he was he was in the Avengers, for crying out loud.
Harry Dean Stanton. Have you seen that documentary about him?
No, I haven't.
I haven't seen that yet either, and I'm dying to. But he's really wonderful, and he's been in everything.
Yeah, he's a great character actor.
He's fantastic. And he's another one like, geeks like us will love forever because of things like Repo Man and all that kind of stuff.
With Emilio Estevez.
Emilio Estevez, yes, such a good movie. But it'll be nice to have these characters. And there's another character that I would like to learn more about that we did not learn anything about in this book at all. Would be Harold the botanist.
Right.
So, who knows what we're going to find out? Who knows where we're going to go with that? Did Harold...
Well, we kind of learned something about Harold in the Laura Palmer diary.
Yes, we did.
But, talking about his agoraphobia and all that. But, yeah, you kind of wonder if there was more to that story than just him being a confidant.
Right, and what happened to him after he cut his face?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Did he keep going with that? I mean, is he still around? Did he ever leave the house again? What did
he at least get
Did he get some stitches?
Does he get some stitches or put some alcohol in
Yeah.
that thing because that could get really infected? And
I know, something.
but,
Because that was just a trowel. That could have had dirt on it. Who knows what's in there?
or fertilizer, what have you. So
Yeah, that could just go badly.
I know a lot of fans don't really like Harold, but
I really liked Harold because it was sort of this, being a high school girl that felt like she was misunderstood.
okay,
To find some guy in town that would just listen to me, I thought would be like this amazing dream come true. And he was like smart and like plants and never left the house, so I always could go there. And
you knew where to find him. He wasn't.
You knew where to find him, and he was just a sweet guy.
Right.
I loved Harold. I did not like what Audrey and James, not Audrey, what Donna and James did to Harold. That bothered me.
Yeah, that kind of. They kind of mind gamed him a little bit.
They mind gamed him and really took advantage of him, and that really bothered me.
Yeah. Well, so. I don't know why, because they didn't really comfortable like saying, "Hey, look, this is part of a police investigation. We could just go out and get a warrant."
Right.
To get, like we could go to the sheriff's station. Hey, we know you're not going to leave, so obviously that's not going to go anywhere.
They trick him with Maddie and make him go crazy.
Yeah, that seems like a really extreme approach just to get a diary out of a locked.
Just to get the real diary out of Harold's house. So, yeah, that was not cool, Donna and James.
Those wacky high schoolers.
Not cool. Not cool at all.
Well, that's not like the only questionable thing that Donna and James did during that entire show.
James is and not James himself, but James is the center of the one part of Twin Peaks I do not like, which is what I refer to as the James Hurley saga.
Right.
Where he goes off and he lives with that older woman who hates her husband.
I hate that. I hate that storyline. And obviously that was when the ratings started really going downhill because they weren't sure where to go after the Laura Palmer mystery ended.
Right. And it really got back on track when Wyndham Earl came back.
It felt. I mean, even though Twin Peaks was a soap opera, it felt really soap opera.
And it felt soap opera in a way that Twin Peaks fans didn't want.
Right.
And the thing is about those episodes is that there's still good stuff in those episodes because that's when David Duchovny shows up.
Right.
And, we have more stuff with the Renault brothers and that kind of thing. But after...
It took several episodes to kind of find its groove back again for that home stretch.
Exactly.
There's that middle period after, like right after Laura's death. Like I think it starts like right with a funeral and then it goes several episodes and then it kind of starts building its way back, but then by then the ratings were so low it was too late to recover.
And by funeral you mean Leland's funeral?
Yes, Leland's funeral. Thank you. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I was not a fan of the James Hurley saga. I liked James. I thought James was an interesting character. I was never a huge fan of Donna. I didn't have a problem with her. I just didn't care.
Right.
So I wasn't like.
Was it that she was too white bread?
Well, I think maybe at the time it was because she was dating Kyle MacLachlan in real life, and so she was my natural enemy.
Oh. just a little jealousy going on.
A little bit. No, I just felt like I liked Donna a lot more after Fire Walk with Me.
Right.
Because what I didn't like about Donna is I felt like she was a very my way or the highway. I do the right thing all the time.
Goody two shoes.
My idea is the good idea.
Taking that moral high ground or looking down at you.
Taking the moral high ground when she's not actually being moral.
Right.
That sort of thing. I didn't particularly care for her because of that. And because of that, I didn't particularly care that she and James were falling for each other. And I didn't feel bad for her when James left and things like that. But she certainly got more interesting to me as the series went on with things like the reveal that Benjamin Horne is her father for real. And, that's another story I'd like to know more about.
Right.
How the hell did that happen? And is that why... is that why Sarah's in a wheelchair? Is there something to do with that whole thing? I mean, there's so much going on in that I'd like to see more of with her. and her in Fire Walk with Me, not just because she was Moira Kelly.
Yes.
But just because it made the movie, that her scenes in the movie made the line in the TV show where she says, where they're talking, where James and Donna are talking, and where he says, even Donna doesn't know me, and she says, I knew her better than she thought I did.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, I forgot about that line.
Yeah, and so I knew her better than she thought I did. And
because Donna trying to be the bad girl like Laura, because Laura was getting all the attention.
Well, just sort of like, I don't even know if it was that. It was just sort of like, hey, I can hold my own with you. We're best friends no matter what. Here's what's going to happen.
Right.
So I thought that made a lot more sense.
Donna caring more about Laura than Laura did about Donna.
Then Laura was capable of caring about anybody at that point.
Right.
Laura had, for as beautiful and as perfect as she seemed, she had a tough time.
Yeah.
She had a very tough time.
As we find out, especially in the diary.
In the diary.
Because that covers years of abuse and, sexual molestation. And so, yeah.
And, and then realizing that it's actually her father.
Right.
Not just some guy that's creepy.
Yeah.
So, and Laura's, and, like the scene with Bobby, where he's crying, talking about how she made me sell cocaine. That, Laura's a harsh person, and I believed Bobby's pain with that. I believe that he probably would have been just fine to be, the rebel captain of the football team who got drunk once in a while, but this whole, getting involved with Leo selling cocaine and then killing that guy. And I don't think that was anything he wanted to do, but Laura could get her claws into people.
Yes, she could.
And she was troubled. She was very troubled. And I think that...
And she was trouble.
She was trouble. Yes, exactly. But I do think she did care for Donna in the only way Laura could. Mm-hmm. And that's when they're, after they have their night at, with Jacques, and they're at the Roadhouse and they're dancing with those guys and they're topless and things start to go out of hand. And, she sees Donna and realizes what's going on. And she goes over and yells at her and says, don't ever wear my stuff. Don't ever. I don't want you to wear my stuff ever.
Right.
And then later they're at Donna's house, and Donna's trying to remember what happened the night before, because they were both obviously slipped Mickeys by Jacques Renault, because that's what he does.
Right.
And she says, were you mad at me for wearing something of yours? And Laura just says, I don't want you to be like me. So
like she's trying to protect Donna.
She's trying to protect her. Right. Yeah. She's trying to
I'm a lost cause. Mm-hmm. I don't want you to go down that road.
Yeah, we are best friends, and it means something to me, but there are things about me you don't know, but there's a reason for that, because you shouldn't know. You don't need to be part of this. This is not something I want for you. This is not a life I want for you.
Right.
So I think she does care and she is protective, but I think she has to be harsh, because she's trying and unfortunately failing to protect herself, but she is trying. She is trying to do whatever she can.
Yep. That's a good point. That's great. I don't know how they're going to top that with the revival, unless, they're going to have to come up with something completely different, I think.
Absolutely, because I think we know pretty much everything.
Because you don't want to copy.
We don't want to copy, and we don't want to rehash.
Right.
I don't want to rehash.
Well, we figure Bob is probably going to try to kill some more girls.
Probably. There's probably going to be, I'm assuming we're going to see
more dead bodies, and that's what brings the mystery back.
With more letters under the fingernails.
Right.
So that's how we're going to know. And of course, we have the whole, I'll see you again in 25 years. Mm-hmm. So we knew something was going to happen.
Yeah.
We just didn't know what. We didn't know how it would manifest itself. Like, is Laura Bob? Is Laura fighting Bob? Are we just going to see her because everybody has to come back because something happens and we're going to have to go back to the lodge for whatever reason?
Well,
So
and we might get some more blood-curdling screams from Cheryl Lee.
the best screamer of all time. I
That
mean, that's
that whole sequence in the Black Lodge where she's just
oh
good,
terrifying.
and it's even worse in reverse. I mean, it's just horrifying that scream that she does.
That's yeah, in the lodge, in on the
Yep,
train,
right.
everything.
Yeah, that's
She's
true.
again, I think very underrated for the job she did
Yeah,
as Laura,
I totally
and
agree.
um, just for things like that with how she can turn on a dime and what she can do with her face and her screams and her just everything that she's able to do vocally is very, very impressive.
Yeah, you kind of
And
wonder like if Twin Peaks would be if it was just coming out for the first time now, would it be more recognized like by say like the Emmys or what have you? Because it would be kind of be that buzzworthy show like things like Westworld or Game of Thrones or Walking Dead, what have you. So would it I mean I have to wonder if it would just be if it would be better recognized now than it was
I
then
don't
because I think at the time in 1990 they didn't really know what to do with that show because it was
true.
so unlike anything else.
Right. And the thing is, I don't think there would have been a Westworld or a Game of Thrones or a Stranger Things or any of those really culty TV shows if there hadn't been a Twin Peaks.
Right. I mean, it's still
I think
influencing shows today. As Stranger Things is a great example of that.
exactly. Stranger Things is a very good example where there's just something out there
Hmm.
in the woods. But I think that, we had cult television. Cult television really started, if you ask me, in 1959 with the Twilight Zone.
Right. That's a great point. I
And
think.
then it really sort of, we really sort of knew what audiences could do in 1966 with Star Trek. Star Trek was really the first, Star Trek also had the letter writing campaign after its first cancellation.
You had the first elements of fandom with Star Trek.
Yes, the first elements of fandom where you have people who know, just like with Twin Peaks that we saw, like I don't think there would have been a Twin Peaks without a Star Trek.
Right.
Where you have elements of I will watch something because someone from Twin Peaks is in it.
Yes.
And I think we started seeing that a lot with Star Trek and the whole obsessive knowledge and what happened and who's this character and fan fiction and stuff like that. I think that started. So I don't think you would have had a Twin Peaks without a Star Trek, but I also don't think you would have had, like I said, like a Westworld without a Twin Peaks, where you have these slow Westworld. I'm assuming you've seen all
Oh
of
yes,
Westworld,
yeah, yes, I have.
where you have a slow burn of a
Right.
show where you are watching the last couple of episodes and you're like, what the hell just happened? Where I think before that, and that was the problem with Twin Peaks, where it was like, okay, this is going too slow. People are losing interest. This is not wrapping up every week. Where, I mean, if you want for another, this is another thing that people, don't remember. We remember because we're talking about it, but it's not something that is in the forefront of everybody's mind anymore. But back when Twin Peaks came out, there still were nighttime soap operas.
Right.
Dallas and Dynasty was
you had
still on the air.
yes.
So that was, that sort of like continuing drama did have an established audience, but that was not the audience watching Twin Peaks.
No.
If you wanted to watch, if you said, oh, you know what, I'm going to start watching Dallas, you could, because everything that happened with Dallas, like if I said to you, who shot JR, you could probably tell me that it was Kathy Lee Crosby. But if I said to people, who killed Laura Palmer, was that Twin Peaks show? I mean, I don't think it's as much part of
It's
the
yeah, it's not part of the
lexicon.
yeah, it's not part of the mainstream,
Mm-hmm.
which
Exactly.
which is kind of nice in the sense that like because a lot of fans like to say, well, I was into Twin Peaks before it was cool, even though it's never been cool.
It's never been cool. No,
Yeah.
no one's ever. It's never been what it's never had a mainstream audience.
But
And
it's kind of that thing like before Doctor Who hit the mainstream. It was one of those shows like, it's almost like a secret society where like, oh, you watched Twin Peaks. You know what I'm talking about. You understand what
it's like a
my
secret
secret
knock.
language. Yeah, exactly. The
Yeah,
secret
it's a
handshake.
secret. It's a secret handshake or a secret knock. And I'll bet that everything I just said about Star Trek is probably exactly Doctor Who in the UK.
Yeah.
That was 1963, and it sort of started an obsession.
It only appealed to a certain crowd.
Only appealed to a certain crowd. And I don't, when you were a kid in Medina, could you get Doctor Who?
Yes, you could. It was off of the WVIZ out of Cleveland.
Okay.
And that's how I got into it, because it used to air like I know we're totally digressing again, which is it's podcast, go figure. So every Sunday afternoon there would be a Doctor Who episode, and it just happened to be one of those things that at the time there obviously weren't as many channels.
Mm-hmm.
So you're flipping the dial looking for something to watch, and then you're like, I'm just totally bored. And then something weird shows up.
Right.
And you're just kind of drawn into it. And I think that's what it is for a lot of Twin Peaks fans.
I think so too.
That it was just something that kind of, like, for me, it captured my imagination. I'm like, what is this? What am I watching? What is this? What's this deal with, like, focusing in on the fan as it's slowly spinning with all this,
exactly.
like this new agey jazz playing in the background.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just this weird, like its own entity that just latched onto people's imagination, and obviously it influenced things with the style and the storytelling and the characters and whatnot, and it has that kind of underground pop culture.
Absolutely, and it paved the
following.
Way. Right, it paved the way for shows like, and just.
Well, the X-Files, for one thing.
The X-Files
wouldn't have existed without Twin Peaks.
There would not have been an X-Files without Twin Peaks. Absolutely not. And then I think it showed that there are possibilities beyond your average family Nielsen rating.
Right.
And then you're able to have things like a Stranger Things that is on Netflix, or in the shows that are on Amazon or Hulu Originals, or even things like a Game of Thrones or Westworld that are on HBO, because they're not mainstream. It's not for everybody. It's not something that you want to put on during prime time. You're going to have to pay attention. It's not linear. And that's the thing. Westworld was not a linear show.
No, it challenged the viewer.
Very much so. And I don't think...
And that's one of the reasons I like Westworld, because it does challenge me. It doesn't pander to me.
It doesn't pander to me, and I think that if we hadn't had a Twin Peaks, we wouldn't have known that there's a TV audience for... that we wouldn't have known that there was a smart TV audience, for lack of a better term, a smart TV audience.
Right.
Because before that, the average television that did well were sitcoms.
Right.
When you think about television in the 1980s, you think about The Cosby Show, or you think about something that you liked as a child, like a Knight Rider or something like that.
Or the A-Team or MacGyver or what have you. Yeah.
It was kitschy. It was, it was an hour-long quote unquote drama, but they had that Glenn Larson formula, everybody laughing before the end credits showed up. Mm-hmm. Things like that, where when you started to have smarter television that expected a little bit more of its audience rather than just what was on when you were watching dinner.
Right. It wasn't just background noise.
Right. Right.
It was something that compelled you to watch and, like, pay attention.
Yes, exactly. You had to pay attention. You couldn't be eating dinner with your family while it was on. You couldn't be folding the laundry while it was on. It couldn't be on while you were doing your homework, or it couldn't be on while you were taking, where you were doing the dishes or something like that. It couldn't be the background. It had to be your focus.
Well, you could be eating donuts while you watch it.
You should be eating donuts. You should be eating cherry pie, too.
Can I just say something? When I was in college watching Twin Peaks, I actually had Twin Peaks parties where I had a couple friends over, and I would lay out the stacks of donuts on my coffee table, and we would kick back and watch Twin Peaks.
That's fantastic.
So yeah, it can be done.
But yeah,
I don't drink coffee. I drink tea. So I had my little mug of tea.
Nice.
My damn good tea and hot.
Damn good hot tea. Exactly.
Yeah.
But and that's the thing too. I mean, there are things I've watched that I watched specifically because someone from Twin Peaks was in them.
Right.
And they're not always good. But,
no.
But Dana Ashbrook was in it, so damn it, I'm watching it.
Yep.
Where, there's,
Well, like,
like,
if to throw out an example, like I never watched the show Psych, but when I found out that they did a Twin Peaks episode, I
Mhm.
watched the hell out of that.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Sykes, I recommend it.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, I get it, but I mean, my point is, I'd never checked it out before
Hmm.
until like hearing that they were going to do, that Twin Peaks nod, and I'm just like,
Exactly,
that's fantastic. I have to tune in.
exactly. I mean, that's why I saw Sleepwalkers.
Right.
That's why, um, honestly, it's why I went back and watched the Mod Squad when it showed up on Nick at Night. It's like I wouldn't have cared necessarily, but it was Peggy Lipton.
Yeah.
That's part.
Twin Peaks got me into David Lynch. I started watching Blue Velvet and Eraserhead because of Twin Peaks.
Right, absolutely. Um, or things like Wild at Heart,
Right.
and just all that. David Lynch to this day is still one of my favorite directors. He's not one of my favorite writers, but he's one of my favorite directors. Um, I think he's a good storyteller. I don't necessarily think he's good with dialogue.
Right. He needs a guiding hand. I totally agree.
He's the Mark Frost.
He's an idea guy. He's like he has a visual, like he sees something visual. It's like that would be cool, but he needs someone behind him like Mark Frost to go, okay, how do we make this work?
Exactly, exactly. And I think it's they're perfect for that.
Right.
But if David Lynch does something, I'm watching it. I'm reading The Angriest Dog in the World, or I was a huge fan of On the Air.
Right. I remember On the Air. You're right. I tuned in just because it was
because
a Frost Lynch Productions. Yeah.
And it was hilarious, and it
Or Lynch
lasted
Frost.
I think 5 episodes.
Right. Yes.
But it was wonderful. I
watched it. I watched it. Yep.
Yeah, I thought it was great, and I thought it was interesting because for us, Doctor Who was on like Saturday nights at 11.
Yep.
And on our PBS affiliate, and On the Air, I think was on 9 or 10 on Saturdays.
So you'd marathon, flip
Or
over.
it was just this sort of obvious thing. It's like, okay, nerds are watching this. They're not on dates. They're with each other watching this show. It's Saturday night. We know the nerds' activity is going to stay home and watch these programs rather than going to parties because this is their party. They're going to get together.
This is it.
Yeah.
That's funny.
They'll and that's another thing too. Is that even an issue anymore when a show is aired?
Not anymore.
In this day and age of TiVo, it's like, who cares when you put a show on as long as your DVR is catching it?
Yeah, for those of us in the Stone Age, we had to schedule things, but
we had to schedule things, and like
we had VCRs, but
and I lived with my parents.
Yep.
And if the good VCR was on the good TV, and if you wanted to watch something, you just better hope your parents didn't want to watch something at that time too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we obviously couldn't record more than one show at a time. So if there was a conflict, you're like, oh crap, what do I do?
Exactly. There was.
I was lucky enough to have my own VCR in my bedroom.
See, now that.
So that was the move back in the day.
Awesome. That's awesome. That would have. That was.
So yeah, that helped. But if there was a schedule conflict, you're screwed.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
You had to decide which one you were going to watch, and then if you missed an episode in your collection, you had to wait for repeats to air so you can go back and fill in that gap.
Right. If you missed it, you just had to wait. There was no downloading it. There was no going on Hulu the next day and finding it.
You kids don't understand.
Understand
what we went through.
How easy it is to access television.
Yeah, exactly. Kids today. Well,
they don't know how hard we had to work to be nerds.
Exactly. Well, let me tell you something frightening. We've actually been talking about this for an hour and a half.
That's not frightening. I'm surprised it hasn't been longer.
My estimate was going to be an hour, so yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there. So I hope everybody out there is enjoying the discussion as much as I am, and hopefully you are.
I hope there's some people our age who are saying, "Yes, stupid parents in the VCR."
Yeah, exactly. So so I'm glad we could be therapeutic and or like be cathartic, perhaps.
Cathartic.
And help you through your memories or bad memories in that regard. Yeah, so one thing we might as well probably try and wrap it up, and maybe we could pick this up on another episode of Ghostwood. But one thing I do want to talk about is that now, one of the reasons that this book, I was looking forward to this book, was obviously to like, well, is it going to kind of like bridge that gap between the original series and the new Showtime series?
No.
No, but there is one tiny little tidbit we're given. And it's a bit where we find out that Cooper, and presumably this is Cooper after he gets out of the Black Lodge, at least physically,
Mm-hmm.
escapes the Black Lodge.
Because
Um,
that's the thing is that we one thing to remember is that nobody knows that he's Bob.
no, no, and then
Nobody knows.
and that's kind of important, especially because uh, we're told that Major Briggs wanted to. I guess he thought that Cooper could help him in his mission,
Mm-hmm.
and so he wanted to show everything that he had compiled in that dossier. So he has Cooper come, like they comes over to his house, but instead of telling him all this stuff, he's like he senses that something's wrong. That
Yeah,
Cooper is not Cooper.
exactly. That's something.
The,
There's an issue.
right. The real Dale's in the lodge, and
Hmm. Write it in your diary.
write it in your diary exactly. So so he backs off that plan totally. We don't know exactly what transpired during this. All we know is that he got freaked out and is like, "No, I'm not doing this." So then he talks about like that the uh, the LPA's Mayday protocols, what he referred to as the Mayday
Hmm.
protocols, are in place and that he must act quickly. And then he states that he's heading to the LPA alone, which is the end of the dossier.
Which is making me think
So it's just
that
another cliffhanger that they throw at us
another
going,
cliffhanger.
ah!
My theory on that one is something happened to Major Briggs, and that is the crime scene that
Right.
they found the dossier at.
See, and that would be great because, as we know, Don Davis is sadly no longer with us.
No longer with us. Yeah.
So it would make sense that Major Briggs is no longer with us.
Right, and that's where I was thinking that Major Briggs
And that's a great theory. I like that theory a lot.
that his death is the crime scene where they found it.
But yeah,
So
but it is interesting. They didn't identify the body.
no, they didn't say. Well, it was
Or at least they didn't
that
say.
crime. That crime is classified. They
That's a
just
good
say that it was found at another crime scene that may relate to this other crime scene, but
right.
that one is classified.
But we're not going to let you. We're not going to talk about that. You
Need to
just
know,
focus.
and
Yeah,
she doesn't need to know. Preston doesn't need to know.
right.
So, and I'm sure she's going to get brought in, but as of right now, she's not. She doesn't need to know. So that's my theory on that one.
That's
That's the crime
that's a
scene.
great theory. I like that theory.
Thank you.
And I'm kind of wondering, like, if Preston's going to try to get part of the mystery that is going to be like, how much does Gordon Cole know?
And I think he's not as dumb as he makes you think he is.
Right.
I think Gordon.
He plays that like that whole like I'm deaf, I can't really hear you, I'm talking really loud, but just you think it's all front.
You think he's just the boss man pushing paper, but he's been around and he knows some things.
Right.
He knows a lot more than he's letting on.
Obviously, I think he knows a lot more about the Philip Jeffries mystery.
Absolutely, which I've been wanting to know more about for 25 years.
I totally agree.
And
Yeah.
not just because it's David Bowie, but because it was something.
It was interesting. It was.
It was interesting. Yeah, where's this come from?
Yep.
It's the day of his dream, and is that part of the dream? All that stuff. So.
All right. Was there anything you wanted to talk about, or is an hour and a half
I think
good?
an hour and a half is good because if I keep talking, I'll talk all night.
That's true. But that's good. That means you're interested, so that's good.
Yeah, I am.
I hope you're having a good. I hope you're having a good time.
I am.
Because
I am.
you have never done this any podcast before, so
I've never done any. I've been. I was a guest on a podcast one time,
okay.
and that was it on Steve Swanson's Muppet Cast.
Oh, that's awesome.
But that's all I've done.
Okay, so all right, well, so technically not a podcast virgin, but it works.
Well, I kind of went all the way this time.
I realized that was an awkward metaphor, but I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. So
No,
sorry,
it's
sorry
fine.
about that.
I'll podcast and tell. I don't mind.
Okay, well, that's good. That's good. All right, I'm trying not to blush here. So
All right.
all right. So okay. Is there anything else? But hour and a half, I guess, is probably good enough to cover it. So normally, what we do on my other podcast is that we kind of give a rating, and usually on a 10-point scale.
Mm-hmm.
Something slightly humorous or whatever, just something that references the material that we're covering. So for me, I give this one 8.5 out of 10 mysterious dossiers because I really liked it, but the contradictions are very frustrating, and I think it takes me out a little bit out of the narrative because I'm so busy like going, oh, that's not right.
That was what happened to me too. It took me right. I'm like, wait a second, and I even in my notes, I have quotes and episodes and things like, okay, here's where I know
Yeah,
this.
yeah. I think it's that anal retentive part of me that's going, that doesn't work. Why is this brain does not compute? And yeah,
It's
you
like
get
so I have
frustrated.
this obsessive nerd thing where it's like I'm getting thrown out of the narrative, and then I feel bad about myself for being that person that's like, oh, that's not what they said on the show,
Yeah, exactly. It's like, no,
It's
you
very
need to relax. It's no, just get into the flow and don't worry about the details. And
repeat
but
to yourself, it's just a show. I should really just relax.
nice Mystery Science Theater reference.
Wise man said that one time.
Yeah, yes, yes. So I don't know if you have your own rating. If not, that's no big deal. But I just
I'm
thought I'd throw
going,
that out.
I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
The losing 1 point for, like you said, the contradictions.
Right.
Um, and for me, there's a little bit of a loss in the score because, and again, if this is what I really wanted, I should write my own book and my own TV series. But
Right.
my preference,
It doesn't live up to my fan fiction.
it's yeah, exactly. My preference would have been to stay strictly supernatural and not extraterrestrial.
Right.
But that's just me. That's just me. I could love it coming in with the show. Who knows? I
Yeah,
don't know.
we don't really know what we're getting with the new series,
Mm-hmm.
but it does seem to hint that yeah, we're going to be playing up the extraterrestrial more,
Right. I'm
especially with this one page in the book. I did want to mention, but I'm glad you brought it up because it's one of the things that fans have picked up on rather cleverly, in my opinion, where it's on page 149 of the book, where you see this nice picture of an owl.
Oh yes.
And it's a cute little owl, and that's kind of looking a little sinister there. Well, as Dr. Jacoby fans know, he was fond of 3D glasses,
Yep.
and he talks about how things in the red spectrum kind of reveal more of what's really underneath.
Mm-hmm.
So when you actually put on 3D glasses, and kudos to the person that figured this out. I wasn't that person. I'm apparently not that smart enough.
Yeah, you told me, so I'm definitely not that person.
But so yeah, so I give credit. It wasn't my finding this out. But if you look at that picture of an owl through 3D glasses, you see something else. You see an image of an alien, and it's a very distinct image of an alien. If you've seen the YouTube video or
The
whatever.
Greys of what they refer to as the Greys and alien lore.
So
Yeah,
the owls are not what they seem because apparently they're aliens.
they're aliens. And I guess for me, I'm more of a Chip Coffee than I am a Giorgio Tsoukalos. So that's just my personality. So I would have preferred that, but I'll take anything Twin Peaks. And the high score comes from presentation.
Right.
I've talked a lot before about where is printed media going to go in this day and age of digital books, digital music,
Right.
digital downloads for movies. And if hard copy physical books are going to stick around, they need to get creative. And this is how you do it.
I totally agree because I don't think you could do this on an iPad.
I think you could. I don't think you'd enjoy it. And have you listened to the audiobook?
No, I have. I've heard segments of it. I haven't listened to the full thing.
It's nice to sort of refresh yourself, and it's good to listen to when you're doing other stuff.
Cast members doing the voices.
Right, it's nice to hear voices and things like that, but it is definitely not the full experience.
Right.
Definitely not the full experience. And this is sort of in the vein of Mark Z. Danielewski's books, who wrote The House of Leaves. I don't know if you've read that.
No, I haven't.
Or Marcia Pessel's Night Film, which again has other elements to it that really of typeface and arrangement and formatting
Right.
that you really lose if you're
Yeah.
just reading it on an e-reader.
And
And I
this
think that's
and
the
this
thing.
book being in the dossier format, obviously, because it's supposed to give you the impression of like, here's photographs and footnotes and whatnot, and those don't really carry off very well in audio form,
In audio form, absolutely not. And even when it's a little better now, I would definitely not want to do this on a Kindle Paperwhite.
right?
But if you had a Kindle Fire or were doing this on the Kindle app on your iPad where it was still in color, it still loses something, especially since when they describe the dossier, the dossier is bound
Yep.
exactly like the book is, with the green binding and the triangles on the spine and everything like that. It's
Yeah, because if you take
kind of
the
what it's telling.
take the dust jacket off, yeah, it looks like a standard, almost like a textbook.
It looks like a textbook, and if you look at the spine, it has exactly how
Right,
it's
right.
described.
Yep,
Yeah,
exactly. It
it's
just like
exactly how it's
I know,
described.
obviously, people who are listening to this in audio form can't see what I'm doing, but yeah, I'm holding up the book and showing off the cover, which you could figure that one out. So
Yes, definitely, because we're assuming everybody's read the book, and hopefully you've
yeah,
read a physical copy. And if you
and
don't
if
have a physical copy, I highly recommend buying one.
yeah, go to your local Barnes and Noble or Amazon and
Just
get a
get it,
copy because it's definitely worth it. I totally agree.
and you'll want to. It's one of those that you want to refer to and look at the
Yeah,
photos and say, okay, here are the Lewis and Clark letters, or here's the photo. I loved the photos of Dr. Jacoby's books.
yes,
His highly
yeah,
descriptive
the old retro style
retro
paperback
paperback
covers. Yeah, with
70s
the
paperback.
artwork. Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, so funny. So this book definitely just gets high marks for me on presentation.
yeah, they definitely, as far as I totally agree on presentation. Um, yeah, it definitely exceeds expectations in that regard because um, it doesn't look like and it's not just a little tiny book. I mean, this is a thick book.
Yes, it is.
It's hundreds of pages. So I mean, for the first real Twin Peaks material we've had in 25 years plus.
It
Um, it,
satiates you.
it's yeah, it's basically like, okay, here's this big tome I've been building for years. Have at it. Enjoy.
Yeah, exactly. And it's certainly what, fans like us have been wanting for a long time, and it's got me
Yeah.
on bated breath
Yeah.
waiting for the series to come back.
And of course, it's got people talking online and
Mhm.
kind of doing what it's supposed to do is kind of raise interest in the show again.
Yes. And I hope that the show will have a broader audience of viewers that will pay closer attention to a show that you have to really think about,
Right.
because
Right.
we've had, like I said, like 25 years of more cerebral television, I think, because of Twin Peaks.
Right. And yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens. And then with especially now with that modern sensibility,
Hmm.
will Twin Peaks be able to adapt to 21st century storytelling?
I think it can. Um, I'm biased, though. I don't know if I can give you an unbiased answer on that one.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of hard, especially once we haven't even seen a trailer yet, a
Yeah.
decent trailer. So yeah,
Hmm.
no, it is supposed to be coming up. We don't know when. So if we're going to review episodes, we're kind of left hanging in that regard.
Right. Right.
So my question is to you now, and as we kind of what we like to call producing on the fly. So where do we go next? Do we just kind of like put it on hiatus in the back burner, or or is there something else that we should start talking about, or you want to talk about the book more, or whatever grabs you? Like, do you want to go like through the like Twin Peaks Fire Walk with me, or the series, or what have you?
I think we could definitely talk about all of it for days.
I agree. Obviously, considering how long we've been talking about it just in this first
I know.
go,
I
this
know,
was
right?
only supposed to be an hour, folks. So apologies for that, but
If anybody's still listening,
yeah,
we
exactly.
appreciate stuck with us. I think
3 days later.
I think we should pick some things to review
I totally agree. So,
and just sort of review some things so everything's fresh for when it's time for the series,
yeah,
which hopefully will be soon.
and now's a good time to obviously go through the past material because you don't know how much of it is going to play a part in the new series.
Right. Right. Exactly. And this would give me a good reason to read the diary again.
Right.
And
I was just thinking about the diary. So do we want to cover the diary next?
yeah, let's do the diary. Let's
As we kind of stay on the book theme.
Twin Peaks book group. Let's
Yeah,
reread the
exactly.
diary,
Yep.
and we will discuss.
Yeah.
We'll discuss that in the
Now
new year.
the diary is available on iTunes. So if you don't have The Secret Diary of Laura Palmer by Jennifer Lynch, start downloading it because it's really good.
It is really good, and it makes you really love Laura even more than you already do. Laura is such a heartbreaking character that the diary helps with that. It's definitely worth it, and it is the kind of thing, yes, definitely get it through iTunes, through iBooks, because it is definitely something that it was done in 1991. Right. So
I still have my paperback copy.
I do too.
So
but it is not like what we were talking about before. It is a format that does translate perfectly well.
Yeah, because it's basically a straight adaptation of the diary. So yeah, that's one will actually work better in ebook format.
Yes,
than The Secret History of Twin Peaks, I think.
Yep.
I totally agree. So. All right. So I think that about does it. Xan, where can they reach you on the interwebs?
Where can they reach me on the interwebs?
If they so desire.
If they so desire, I am on Facebook, Xan Sprouse. I'm on Twitter, Udanax19. That's UDANAX. It's Xanadu spelled backwards.
Yeah, exactly. Which Twin Peaks fans should appreciate.
Yes, exactly. That's very true. They should appreciate that. Udanax19 on Twitter, Udanax19 on Instagram, Udanax19 on Vine. I don't necessarily do a lot with it, but that's who I am.
So I'm going to guess Xanadu was a really big film in your past.
Huge film. I'm one of the few people that owns the DVD and loves it. Unironically loves Xanadu.
All right. So as for me, of course, at Charles Skaggs on the Twitter machine, at Charles Skaggs on the Instagram, Facebook, of course, Charles Skaggs, or Google Plus for all you crazy kids on the Google Plus, all 12 of you on the Google Plus, and my blog of geeky things, Damn Good Coffee and Hot. If I can get this to play properly. Damn good coffee and hot. Where I talk about all of these things of the world of Twin Peaks, or Ghostwood, of course, or my other podcast, Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast, or the Phantom Zone podcast, where I review comic book on TV shows with Karen Lindsay. So, yeah, if you want to know more about that, or if you want to know just me talking about comics, sci-fi, whatever I'm interested in, and I'm interested in a lot. So, if you're into that kind of thing, please check out my blog. I dig it. And please give us some likes on our new Facebook page, Ghostwood, the Twin Peaks podcast. Or you can reach us on Twitter at GhostwoodCast. So we actually have our Twitter account going. Or if you have any questions or stuff you want us to talk about, how about dropping us a line at ghostwoodpodcast@gmail.com, and we'll consider it and think about talking about whatever you think we should be talking about. So,
if people want to tell their friends how to download our podcast, what platforms can they find us on?
They will presumably be on. We haven't set this up because we're recording the very first episode, but we're with Southgate Media Group, so we should be on iTunes now that we have a first episode to actually upload. We should be on Stitcher. We should be on Libsyn. I will be posting once the episode starts getting uploaded. I will post about on Damn Good Coffee and Hot, and also share it on my Facebook and Twitter pages of where you can find our episode. So obviously, if you're listening to this, you know where to find us because, hey, you're listening to this. So well done, you, for figuring it out. But
good job.
Exactly. So, for if you want to tell somebody about it, yeah, we'll definitely get the word out and tell others where they can find us as well. So you won't be alone in listening and being one of the cool kids listening to the Ghostwood, the Twin Peaks podcast.
Yes, the cool table is a very large table. Bring as many people as you want.
Exactly. So thank you, Xan, for being a part of this. This means a lot to me because I love being able to talk Twin Peaks with you. Hope you had a good time.
I had a great time, Charles. Thank you for having me as part of this. This is fun. I haven't talked Twin Peaks like this in a long time. So this is good.
Well, hopefully it hasn't dissuaded you from talking about it more because I think there's a huge backfill of Twin Peaks information that we could just raid and dust off after 25
Absolutely.
years, like the diary, Laura Palmer's diary. So I'm definitely looking forward to that because I have not read that in literally decades.
I haven't read it in forever, so that'll be fun.
Yeah, that will be. So I'm looking forward to that. So keep your ears and downloads peeled for episode 2 at some point. And thanks for listening to Ghostwood, and we'll see you again. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.